At the beginning, I was making too much effort to actually survive. If you see me thinking about a business idea, I'm always thinking about the problem more than actually the solution. I'm always learning or working with a company like a full-time job and also building something on the side. The way that I see it is that I cannot stop learning. Everything I know, I learn it from another person. If I have enough money, I'm going to buy my freedom. I think that's the wrong way to see it. Once you start your own business, everything gets a little bit harder because now everything depends on you. So the thing is getting used to being uncomfortable.
How do you juggle between friends, family, work, training? How do you find like a healthy balance?
Good question. I think balance is...
Welcome back to another episode. Today's guest is an adventurer, an entrepreneur, and a badass athlete. This guy has achieved great things in his life, from launching successful businesses to finishing 7.3 Ironman. This dude is an absolute beast of a human. Without further ado, let's welcome Carlos Ruiz Del Vizo. How's it going, man? Welcome to the
Hey,
show.
hey Daniel. Good to see you, man.
Good
How's
thing.
everything?
A lot, man. It's been a lot happening since last time we saw each other. It's like probably 10, 12 years ago. So, yeah, we both went to college together, and there's a lot I want to cover. But let's just from the beginning, right? You had to leave your country in order to, seek a better future. Life of an immigrant is never easy. A lot of us have to experience that. Tell me a little bit of your story from the moment you realized you couldn't stay in Venezuela anymore and had to take the big step and then try it in a new country.
Yeah, of course. Well, a lot of things happened in Venezuela, and at the beginning, it was basically I was making too much effort to actually survive on the country, so everything was really hard, right? So the the idea of staying in Venezuela, building a family, building a future was actually getting like smaller, right? So that's when I decided to take a trip to Miami. Once I landed in Miami, I noticed like the Latin culture was here, and it wasn't easy to make decision, right? So since we since me and my now wife basically wanted something similar, we didn't want like a big cultural change. We decided that Miami was the best option. So what happened in Venezuela? Well, that's another story for another chapter. But you can see it in the news for the last 20 years. That's a decaying country in so many ways, and yeah. So Venezuela wasn't an option anymore to grow as a family. So yeah, that was the option. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, roughly, I think 20% of the population roughly have left the country. It's a mess down there. But how was the transition when you had to emigrate? How was the feeling from starting from zero? Because again, you're leaving family, friends, you're leaving jobs, maybe businesses, and you're facing new life, new dynamics, new environment. What were the struggles of the
Yeah.
adaptation?
Many struggles like immigration is not easy in any way. Even and money is not um, the main concern once you immigrate, right? So you can have money and you can still have a big trouble in terms of how do you adapt to the country, how do you adapt to new rules, how the new system works. You need to start from scratch, and when I mean start from scratch, it's also friends and everything. So um, thankfully, uh, in, thankfully, I had the opportunity to come with a large part of my family, and besides that, I also do all types of sport. That's something that actually allow me to get like into several groups of friends, right? So I also play golf, I play polo, I run, I bike, and I do all these type of things, and that allow me to have uh, different friends, like different group of friends for each activity, right? So once I came to the US, the struggle of being alone is something that thankfully I wasn't um, uh, concerned about. But again, adapting to a new style of work and adapting to a new style of to a new language in so many ways and everything, it gets hard, right? So actually, a cool story is that my aunt, when I came to the U.S., like the first week that I was here, she told me like the first 4 years are going to be extremely hard, right? And it's not because of money, because you can do well with money, but it's going to be an adaptation process that everybody suffers for the first 4 years of immigration. Then you start feeling more at home. Then you start separating from your old country, and it begins a new stage in your life. And the fun fact is that that happened exactly as she predicted. I remember the first 4 years were really hard, uh, and and hard in terms of mental health, like feeling good with myself, and feeling good with the family, not being bitter all the time, and those type of things. So it's something that's really, yeah, it was very accurate.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely relate to that. And you said something that it could help a lot of people, regardless where they're coming from, when they start a new life, whether it's in a new city or in a new country. You relied on your sports, on your hobbies in that case, and you found people that felt the same way, people that share your same hobbies and passions, or even likes for sports, either golfing, polo, running, all of that. So I think that was like a smart, I mean, a cool, natural way to meet new people and just feel more like at home and make the transition slightly easier. It's never easy, but it makes it slightly easier than just on a regular basis if you're just by yourself, because that loneliness, especially when you're in a new country with a new language and all of that, it could take a toll on your mental health, as you were saying. And yes, for some people it takes longer than other ones when it comes to the adaptation. But yeah, I guess what we miss is what we used to have. There's no so,
Yeah,
so we miss what is no longer there, right? Um,
yeah. Yeah,
Interesting.
and I couldn't agree more, right? So, and there's a everybody loves their home in so many ways. Like Venezuela has so many benefits, but we're always saying like Venezuela is the best country. But for every immigrant, their home country is going to be the best country all the time. So when you come to a new country, you start comparing your new home with your old home. So that fight or that conversation that you're having with other immigrants, it's like, and you can see it when you travel to any cities with friends or with family. Everybody, the question of an immigrant always is, would you live here? Would you move to this city? And that's something that doesn't happen. Like people that are not immigrants, they don't ask themselves that question. It's something that I remember I went to a trip to Utah with some friends, and I realized like everybody was actually asking like, is it a good city to for hobbies? Yeah, it's a good city for hobbies. But the following question was always, would I live here? Right. So would I move here? Would I build a new life here? Would I build a family? What would be the conditions to build a family or start from scratch here? And it's funny because it's something that I realized that only immigrant people actually ask that question. The other ones are actually thinking, well, my home is whatever. It's Missouri, could be Montana, could be Colombia, could be whatever it is. But the immigrant are always like in some ways comparing cities and comparing to actually build a better life, right?
No, and that is very interesting. And I've talked to many Americans because I live down here in Austin, and we have people from all over the U.S. And that question seems like it is easier for if you're moving from one city to another one inside your own country. It's like, well, worst case scenario, I can move back, right? But as an immigrant,
Yeah.
it's like, well, I'm almost putting all the chips on the table. I'm making this transition, so I want to make sure that I have the best chances of making it there, but not only financially, whatever, but in terms of being happy with my family and being able to just have the type of life that I couldn't have back there. So that is a very interesting point you're making right there. And since you mentioned Utah and probably was just an example of one of your trips, did you ever consider moving to a different city within the US outside Miami?
Um, at the beginning, it was something that I was considering, and the reason was ignorance, right? So I was ignorant about the difference in culture that every city in the US has. Like if you move to the East Coast or the West Coast, you're going to see that it's really, really different, right? So I had the opportunity to work in California, and I'm still working with people in California. And the way they manage life is entirely different to what the people in New York or are doing, right? So, um, as I mentioned before, like for me, it was actually for me and my wife, my now daughter. For me, it's really important the Latin culture, right? So that the only places that you can find that is going to be Texas, maybe in California, that you're going to see some influence of Latinos. But it's not the same as Miami, right? So over there, you have third generation, second generations Latinos. That is kind of different. Mostly Mexicans. You get so. Um, the idea was to find Venezuelans, right? Like people like us that talk like us and everything. So Miami was like the best option on that end, right? So at the beginning, I was asking myself, do I want to move to New York? That has been my dream, like from ever, like moving to the financial center and so on, so on. But after traveling a lot to New York, I realized like that's not for me. I'm a very outdoor person. I like doing outdoor sports. I like the beach. Right now, over here in Miami, I get the same weather all year in some sense. I get a humid season. I get a warm season, but every day I can go biking and I'm good, right? So even in the winter, I can go and get a 6 hour bike ride and I'm good. So um, in some sense, Miami was really similar. And at the beginning, I was questioning everything, right? So, but it wasn't. Uh, it wasn't until I started traveling to more cities that I realized how much I like Miami. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that's very cool, dude. I mean, honestly, because it's funny because both of our stories are similar but very different at the same time. Because when I decided to move to the US, one thing I said to myself, I'm not going down to Miami. I'm not going to Miami. Any other city but Miami. So
yeah,
yeah, but I mean it's different. But when it comes to the weather type, and I experienced that to some degree in Texas, where you can be outdoors almost all 12 months in a year, right? That is a cool thing where you can hike, when you can run, when you can bike, and not being miserable for 4 or 5 months a year with deep snow, uh,
yeah.
freezing weather. So I get you, and New York to me has been an awesome city to visit, but living the lifestyle, I think that's a lot more stressful than most cities, I would assume.
Yeah, yeah. And I think especially for people like you and I that we come from a warm weather where we have dry and wet season, but the temperature stays the same all year. So you can be in the coldest month and the temperature is, I don't know, 72 Fahrenheit.
Maybe
That's
60,
incredible.
maybe 65. Pushing it, just like maybe 65. Yeah,
Yeah, like in the mountains and everything. But yeah, it's a warm weather all year round, and we come from that, and we were born in that. I'm guessing that for someone that was born with the cold, they have a different um, point of view. But for me, we come from Venezuela. It's a Caribbean country. Like the warm is actually very important. I like skiing. Like I like doing snow sports, but that's only a week or two, maybe 3 weeks a year, and I get fun. It gets fun and everything, but I can get tired as well very quickly.
so I know that your entrepreneur are hard, right? Since I met you, you always wanted to start your own business, and you have worked for companies and you have done for yourself. So how's your creative process in a way that how you prioritize which business ideas to pursue?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's not a easy to answer question, right? Because um, the creative process of an entrepreneur is actually, I would say, on my side, is actually looking for problems to solve, right? I'm always looking for like if you see me thinking about a business idea, I'm always thinking about the problem more than actually the solution. I'm thinking on what are people doing right now and how could it actually be better. Like how could I make it more convenient, or how can I make it easier, right? And even to myself, the first business that I started was a marketing agency. Well, I wouldn't say a marketing agency, more of a web. development agency that specialized in conversion rate optimization, like landing page creation, advertisement, and those type of stuff. Um, the first business, actually, the creative process was actually to optimize my side of the business, right? To make my job easier and I can provide more services, let's say, to customers, to actual customers. So I started building websites and everything. I found tools that helped me build websites like in, I don't know, in 15 minutes. So it was something that I started doing, optimizing by myself. And it's the same process for my, let's say, my entrepreneurship point of view, right? So thankfully, I have been lucky to also learn a lot from companies, as you said, that I have worked with, right? So I'm always like learning or working with a company like a full-time job, and also by building something on the side, because the way that I see it is that I cannot stop learning anything, right? I can start by myself with my resources and bootstrapping everything. But what that is going to accomplish is that I'm going to build a failing business with nothing to innovate. Um, if I keep working with big companies, I keep working with consultants, I keep working with new people, learning from new bosses and new teams. That actually helps me build a better business on the side, right? So until the time is due and I have to dedicate 100% to the business. Uh, but again, I try to make it easier for me, and I try to make it as well self-sustained, right? Like a business that can accomplish its own sustainability, if that makes sense.
That is a very, very smart way of approaching things. And this is the first time I sort of see it from that point of view, in a way that whenever whoever has a 9 to 5 job and wants to launch their own business, they do it whether they're tired of what they're doing in their office, or they feel that they can do more, or they can make more money on the side, and they wait until the side hustle grows to a point where they can quit their 9 to 5 job. In your case, it's actually different. You are taking those jobs to learn. Basically, they're paying you to learn some skills, and you're applying those skills to your business, because your end goal is to build a better business. But you do realize it's just easier if you do it with the help of somebody else, in this case a company. So it is a very smart way of seeing things, which hindsight, I've never used that approach, and I think that most people don't use that approach. So it's,
Yeah, because most people actually think on money only. So they think about money like, if I have enough money, I'm going to buy my freedom. And I think that's the wrong way to see it, because your own business is not going to be more. Your own business is not going to be easier in any way, and that's something that I think it's a misconception in so many ways, because people think like having my own business, I'm going to have uh, my own time. Like, that's not all cases, right? So you can have a software as a service company, and okay, you may be able to solve your, let's say, your time issues, but you're going to still work. You're going to work more time. Like, that's for a fact, if you dedicate 100% to your business. So the if you work for a, let's say that you start your own service agency, right? Let's say design, web development, whatever. Your time is going to be the client's time, right? The client is going to be the one demanding your time. So the sacrifice is actually having a boss that is actually usually that people don't like their bosses, against you managing your own time, that it actually has its own battles, right? So, and I try to be on the middle, because I like learning from people. Like, everything I know, I learn it from another person. So in some ways, I need to learn. I need to keep always um, making new friends, making new managers, having new bosses, because everybody's going to teach you something different. Um, and on the other side, I try to start my own businesses to get my own feedback on the things that I'm doing. Like, in yeah, and in some sense is having my own mistakes, right? So making my own mistakes and making my life a little bit harder, so I can learn a little bit faster.
Yeah, one thing that you mentioned over there is just like that has been on my mind for a while. Is just you don't have to do this by yourself. In a way, you need to. It's faster and easier if you rely on other people when you learn from other people's mistakes and you learn from their growing pains. That yes, you will have
Yeah,
some of your own, but then if you can minimize those and use other people's experiences, you're just going to get from point A to point B much faster than if you just bootstrap it on your own and try your own thing. And when it comes to time, I was watching this TED talk about this guy talking about how even if you're doing something that you love at a 9 to 5 job, the fact that you cannot control your time when you have to be there all the time, it eventually turns, it makes you feel eventually like the same way that if you didn't enjoy what you were doing. So I can see how some
exactly.
people would rather work 60, 70 hours a week on their own things. Like it's my choice to work on this rather than just work 40 hours at a job because feel that even though they're making a decent money, even though they're enjoying what they're doing, they don't control their time. You basically use an approach where you can use both and leverage those.
Yeah, in UX design and A/B testing, it's always there's a saying that you need to let the user know they have control, right? And the
Mhm.
psychology behind that is what you're saying. Like people need to have the sense that they have control over their life, and I think that's why the hybrid working model is working so well, right? Because people have, in some sense, control on what days do they go to the office, what to do with my time. If I have a dentist appointment on Thursday, I'm going to miss Thursday at the office and go on Wednesday. So that gives some sense of control. Um, but at the end, in some sense, like some people don't understand like what's the approach to your business, right? So if it's a service business, you're going to be like working more hours, and you're not going to have the same amount of time. And besides of that, you're not going to have the same stability that you have having a full-time job. That's a key factor, right? So over here in the US, one thing that compared to the European countries, the way of work is that over here you're concerned that your full-time job is actually uh, if you get without a full, let's say if you stay without if you get lay off, right? So and your full time job ends, like your medical insurance ends, your car payments, your mortgage, and everything actually is going to go to default. While on the European countries, you get like if you get fired from your job, it's actually okay. I'm not going to be able to go get a beer or go eat outside, but all the things that actually make your life go easier, that is basically healthcare and education and public transportation, everything is provided by the country. So that gives some sense of happiness, some sense of stability, sanity in some sense, and that's why so many people are against, let's say, the American model, and I can understand why. But again, once you start your own business, you fall into you need to pay your own healthcare. You need to pay. Everything gets a little bit harder because now everything depends on you. So you cannot take free days, right? So if I take a sick day on a job, I'm going to still be paid for that day. But if you take a sick day with your own business, that's money that is not entering your wallet in any way. So that sense of getting my own my own time and my own control is actually, I would say, like it's an idea that nobody actually really thinks about it. And yeah, having your own business is the best thing because you grow as a person actually when you start providing or managing people and you start understanding the business from an owner perspective is entirely different, like the way you think about, and that actually also provides value to your full-time job. So yeah, that's the truth behind it.
Yeah, it's true. What you're saying, it's actually very, very true. When we see as a business owner say, hey, I can manage my own time, I can make more money, because as I was talking to one of my guests on the previous episodes, like having a job is very easy, but the problem is that you do have a ceiling. When you're a business owner, your ceiling is unlimited. But what very few people realize is that your floor is also unlimited, and you can be in the red for a long time, and that's kind of scary, and that's why you don't count. Okay, see, everything relies on me. I don't have that bi-weekly or weekly or monthly paycheck that I know that I'm gonna get, and it's everything is on me. If I don't put food on the table, it's my fault. It's nobody else's fault. So it is very, very tricky. And yes, as I do agree with you, having your own business is great, because it teaches a lot and helps you grow as a person, and pushes you to reach new levels. When you were mentioning the European lifestyle, this is something that I've discussed with friends of mine here, is that the American culture gets very much very, in a way that everything's about hustle, 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 which is absolutely true. And people live paycheck to paycheck. The lifestyle of an European country is more relaxed, and you live in a better way. But it seems like you thrive more in this kind of culture, where you have your either your full time job plus your hustle. It's something that you love, and and it seems like not a lot of people get to enjoy that day to day thing. How do you do to to keep pushing, even though how much work you're putting every single day?
Yeah, the the reason why I thrive, let's say, in this culture is because I like working, right? So in some sense, I don't mind putting more hours into things to actually get the things that I like. In some sense, when I started here in the US, I started working with a company, with a fintech company, and at the same time, I was managing my web marketing agency. I was one of the main developers, so the developers' hours were actually at night, right? So I left the office at 6, and then I started basically programming websites and everything. So for me, getting my hands dirty and starting to work on things like is something that I like. It's something that I'm passionate about. So I can get on the weekend and go mountain biking or whatever. So the idea is to get the most out of my weekdays so I can enjoy the most on my weekends. But just recently, well, recently 2 years ago, I started uh, I, I I removed the word weekend from my let's say from my calendar, right? So if I need to work on a weekend, that's okay for me. So I started also doing weekend things on the weekdays. So and that's where all the Ironman things came true, right? So I started going on ride bikes on Mondays, and I can take 3 hours for a ride bike. And I didn't leave that for the weekend only. So the weekend is for family and those type of things. But um, I I think the U.S. system, let's say the way the things are managed over here in the U.S. are better for people to be more successful in so many ways. There's more demand on everything. Everybody is willing to spend on some things, and the system is built around spending. So when you have a system that is built around spending, you also have a system that is built around building things. So on that sense, it's like it's easy to build things in the U.S., right? So you can build a business over here, and the demand will go to you. Compared to a country like Spain, if you want to put it that way, like the culture itself is very hard for people to spend money on things, right? So try to get as Spanish people to spend, let's say, $20 on whatever subscription, and I'm guessing that's a cultural fight that Netflix and all these platforms are having over there, and it's a cultural thing, right? So I like the way the US is built to grow. That you can go into debt to build a business. That's almost impossible in every other country. So those are the things that have allowed me to, let's say, build something over here in the US. Yeah.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you with that. I mean, you can say whatever about the U.S. It is a very very flawed country. I get it, but there's no other place like this where you can thrive as a business owner, as an entrepreneur. There's absolutely no other place. I haven't seen it. I haven't found
Right.
it. So yeah, and the main reason why I'm still here, even though I'm European. I have the European passport as well, and I have friends and family living in Europe, and they tell me almost monthly, "Hey, why do you move there?" It's like, dude,
Yeah.
I can make something here, and which I won't be able to do it over there. Or maybe I will, but I have more chances to succeed here than to succeed over there. So I completely agree with you. When you mention that, and I also mentioned it on the intro, you have run and completed 4 Ironmans or half Ironmans. What got you into
Yeah.
training for those? Because those are extremely challenging.
Yeah, and they're demanding in time, right? So you need to start training every day. Like your life becomes training in some way. But that was actually what I was looking for. As I said before, a couple of years ago, I started looking like my life, and I have always worked on remote as a remote worker. Um, my business, my let's say when I came to the US, I started working on a company here in Miami, but then I started working with companies in California, so my positions were remote, and I started realizing that like staying at home without doing anything was actually it was actually bad for my mental health in some ways. I was starting to feel burnout. I was starting to feel like nostalgic and everything, that what have I done with my life and everything. And that's when I decided, like, I'm going to start training for triathlons and make my day-to-day basis uh, having an excuse to go out to the street, right? So it could be a Monday, Tuesday, or a Wednesday, and I'm 2 hours on the bike, right? So um, the the hard thing about triathlons, it's the training part, right? It's the consistency. But since I put the consistency part as part of my daily habits, it became easier for me. And that's the first triathlon was very hard. The second one was easy. The third one was even easier. And it's something that I build the habit around it as and I wouldn't call it as a mental health thing, but I build it as an improvement, right? So I started to improve myself in so many ways. I also started learning Italian. I also started learning. I started getting into courses like UX design in Google and those free things, and I finished them. And the truth behind it is because I want to improve myself every day. Like if I haven't done that, like I don't know how my life would look right now. I was gaining weight. I was actually very unhealthy. I was feeling bad. I was sleeping bad. So all those type of things were actually involved, and I decided to be part of a sport that can, I think, can accommodate my lifestyle, right? So since I like every sport, I think triathlon is good because I'm doing something different every day.
That's awesome,
Yeah.
dude. I mean, that is absolutely incredible, and I can relate to that to some degree because I found, in my case, I found running a couple of years ago, and it's been sort of having that consistency makes you feel better, and in my case was
Yeah.
mostly
So
in my case was mostly battling depression. I was going at that point, and I used as a coping mechanism, and then I just fell in love with the sport. I completely fell in love with the sport, and I feel the same way about you. When I always want to improve, I'm always seeking that. It's just any way that I can just get myself better, I'll do it. Whether it's just learning or reading books or watching things on YouTube or whatever the case, but always looking to get better at something, which is absolutely incredible that you share that as well. And I know that these are one
yeah.
of the hardest things Ironman has, was one of the hardest things that somebody can do, not only from a physical standpoint, but mentally. Actually, mentally would be even more so. What have you learned about yourself after running and competing in these races?
Well, a lot. Like that's a loaded question, but yeah,
Yeah.
like tons of things, right? So running, specifically since on in all these competitions you cannot use music, so
Oh, you
there's
cannot?
no music whatsoever. No, you cannot. So
Gee.
um, at least when I'm training, I have, let's say, my headphones, like the ones that have the conduction that you can
Uh-huh.
hear and
Yeah,
everything. But the open shocks, I have one. So
I have those. Yeah.
the good thing about those is that you can still be aware about everything, but you're basically distracted by music, let's say podcasts, or even I put movies sometimes, right? So I can, if I like a movie so much, I put the audio of
Oh
the
wow.
movie, and I'm laughing myself like I'm watching the movie in my head. Um but yeah, once you start running without, or let's say running or biking without the headphones, is that everything gets hard, right? So as you're saying, but what I learned, I think, about myself is that I'm a very, I wouldn't say competitive, but I like competing against myself, right? So if I put myself, let's say, on the tennis court and I lose, I don't get bitter or anything. I don't like competing against other people, but the fact of improving myself, that's something that actually drives me a lot. So that's one of the things that I learned, right? So it's always keeping trying to improve my numbers, trying to improve my times, my watts, the amount of power that I'm putting into the bike, the amount of yeah, the strides in the running. Everything gets involved when you start thinking about that. And about myself, it's about the habits, right? So I learned as well that I need to build habits for me to actually accomplish things. If not, I start procrastinating and everything, and that's something that triathlons brought me as well.
You just blew my mind. I had no idea that you couldn't compete, at least biking and running, without headphones, even if it's their open shocks. That I cannot imagine doing that. Yeah, I can work out at the gym without music. I'm fine. I can run a couple miles without music. Put me more than 10 miles without music. It's rough. Which comes to a question I have, which I've always been obsessed with mental strength and mental toughness, right? And in your
Yeah.
case, even that, when you are hours and hours, whether biking or running, you're in your head all the time. It's just you and your thoughts. How do you develop mental toughness? How do you work on it?
Well, like, you gotta. I think my only answer to that is actually you need to go out and start doing it more. The thing is, like, people are afraid and uncomfortable with their own thoughts, right? So that's the bad thing. The good thing is, like, you could be uncomfortable with your own thoughts, but you cannot avoid the problems, right? So what I'm trying to say is that if you're uncomfortable with your own thoughts, that's a problem that you need to solve, and to address the problem, you need to confront it. So uh, if you're not able, let's say, to run, let's say, without headphones, it's going to be hard the first 10 minutes. Then the next one is going to be hard the next 15 minutes. And then you're going to realize that you can run 1 hour and you're going to be perfect. So the thing is getting used to being uncomfortable. So one of the things that I'm always telling my wife about, the people that have a lot of endurance, and in every way, like mental endurance and physical endurance, is the amount. It's not the amount of time that you. It's not that they don't get tired. It's the fact that hold. They can hold the pace being tired for longer. So it's not about, okay, I'm running and I stop. No, it's about, if you're feeling tired, you need to keep going, and that's some David Goggins
Yeah.
thing, but it's true, right? Everything at the end, even for mental things, it's like you need to be able to have uncomfortable conversations. You need to have able to have uncomfortable. You need to be able to feel that being uncomfortable is something very common, and you need to get used to that, because you're not going to grow if you don't feel uncomfortable. And I think citing Jordan Peterson, he's always saying about, also something about that with the lobster metaphor. He's always saying, like, the only way a lobster can grow is that they need to grow out of their shell, so they need to change shells. So they go into, so it's a whole process, but the idea is that they need to basically break what's protecting them to actually grow in some sense.
Yes, because I mean, everyone has their negative thoughts. Everyone has their own fears, insecurities, and all of that. Especially when you're pushing your body to the limit, and yeah, even the top performers experience that. They and I feel that the difference between those who make it and those who don't is what happens between their ears. Absolutely, because
Yeah.
you can be talented and all that, but if you're not mentally strong, you're never gonna get over the hump, never. And that is something. And just listening to you, I'm probably gonna start running without music, because my thing is, even though I'm thinking about stuff while I'm running with the headphones, my thoughts and the music get me distracted from me feeling tired. Because one thing that happens with us is just the moment they feel tired, automatically you start slowing down. Automatically you start like, okay, I can slower the pace. Nobody's looking at me anyway. So, but
It
those
doesn't
train
matter.
exactly. But I would care. I would know. So those trainings, those sessions is what get you to a point where I can perform that on race day, because I've been practicing, I've been training that side of me. Both physical and mentally are both key in order to do anything in life, from building a business to running endurance races.
Yeah, yeah, and try it. Like the idea is for you to break that barrier, right? So I wouldn't say I'm the example to follow, like, in terms of Ironmans and those type of things, because I admire other persons. So for me, yeah, maybe for some people, I'm basically what I'm doing is hard, but for me, there those ultra marathoners and all those people that are running tougher things are the people that I admire, and everything, all the things that they do are related always to mental health, to keep consistent, to keep being consistent all the time, right? um uh, like one example is that I have a friend that asked me a few weeks ago, like, I didn't feel like running, and I didn't want to run 25 minutes, and I said, like, for me 25 minutes is actually a workout. So it's like what you're actually rejecting because you want to do 10K in one run, or 10, I don't know, 6 miles in one run. Like, that's not how you train. Actually, you need to do small things every day to actually build something. So, and that's how, let's say, endurance athletes, that's how they actually grow, because you start doing, then the easy, let's say the hard for everyone becomes their easy workouts. So that's actually how you grow.
Well, one thing I learned, speaking about that, speaking about your friend who just wanted to run like a 6 miles or so, one thing I learned about when I start training for half marathons and full marathons is, most of your training has to be easy. Most of your training have to be easy.
Yeah.
And we tend to be obsessed with, I want to push myself, I want to push myself, and you don't grow if you're trying to run at a 70% or just 100% every single time. So I'm assuming that the same applies for you, both on biking and swimming.
Yeah, yeah, for everything. Like, there's a famous TikTok about no pain, no gain,
Mhm.
about how the American Olympians train against the rest of the world, and he talks about that specifically. Like, in the U.S., we have the culture, that the hustle culture, right? Like, you need to fight, you need to be always on top. Like, everything is, if the David Goggins, like, if you're not bleeding, you're not doing anything. And the Europeans are more like, well, if I'm running and I see a hill, I'm going to walk the hill.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to keep running, and then I start running again when it gets flat. So it's a different point of view. I'm more into the European way because I'm a person that believes in consistency, in habits, and those are the things that are actually build, let's say, build the strength that I'm going to have, let's say, or the endurance. But you get athletes that train the other way, and they also have good results. So I think that's something that is very subjective in some ways.
Interesting. Yeah, and David Goggins, he's just 101. He's just an animal. That dude is absolutely animal. Um, yeah, he's one of those outliers that you don't see very often or almost at all. But yeah, I can.
Yeah, exactly. and sorry to interrupt, but
Go
I
for it.
feel like in some sense, David Goggins, what is bringing to the table is the fact that that's how I admire him, right? Because what he brings to the table is that people quit really early stages. Like it's like I cannot feel is what we were talking before about the feeling uncomfortable. Like you need to be comfortable, but with pain, you need to be comfortable like trying new things, and that's what David Goggins is pushing. The the extreme that it needs to be blood and you need to sweat and you need that's something that is okay, it's good, but that's for the extremes. But what he's really pushing is actually you need to be able to like you need to know that where if you stay in your comfort zone, you're not going to do anything. That's the whole idea behind it.
Absolutely. And this is gonna sound this is gonna become eventually a cliche on this podcast because I keep telling a few people I feel that most people don't fail, they quit in a way that they
Yeah,
whether business, life, relationships, they don't give enough time for things until you get better. And as I said in the past, in order for you to be good at something, you first need to suck at it. And sucking at something
yeah,
I mean, it sucks. Sucks. No, it's not easy. I don't know if it's about ego. I don't know what it is, but most people don't give enough time to see the improvement and to actually get over that mental hump and then see, okay, it wasn't that hard. I can keep going.
yeah, yeah. And I couldn't agree more. Like, but also it's because expectations are too high, right? Um, so going back to mental health, what you were asking me about, how did I started running Ironmans and didn't quit after 3 years doing it. It's um, is that it's actually that my expectations weren't too high. If I needed to finish an Ironman, my first Ironman, what my expectation was, I need to finish it. The second one was basically I need to finish it a little bit with less time than the other one. But it's not like if I don't finish it in 2 hours, I'm a failure. No. So you need to give yourself time to be bad at the sport or the things that you're at. As you're saying in business, it's like if you're not having success in the first 2 weeks, that's good. Like that's actually what was that you need to expect that. Like when you have a business, the people think Facebook was born from one day to the other. Facebook was like a 5 year business to be profitable. Even Amazon took like I don't know how many years. So you see that um, people people have too high expectation of themselves and they put the bar too high without thinking that you need to actually step by step. It's one thing after the other. You need to stop losing money at first. When you stop losing money, you need to start earning money. And before you need to start earning money, you need to hire more people. So if you're going to start a business, you need to take in consideration that your business is going to take 3 years to be to become something. Yeah, and in some sense, that's I think the idea of expectation is something that and if I don't accomplish my expectations, I'm a failure. No, it's like you put the bar too high
Yeah.
sometimes. Yeah,
And I think that it's becoming, or I think it's getting worse and worse, especially because of social media. We see on Instagram, we see all these top performers. We don't see their journey. We see the end results. Whoever that is, it could be an athlete, it could be a content creator, it could be an entrepreneur, whoever, and we see them
yeah,
and we see, well, we are not that different. I mean, they don't have a special talent, they don't have a special skill, so I can be like him or I can be like her. The problem is we want it now, and that comes with the high expectations, and we're not. And again, every now and then I'm guilty of that because I want everything for yesterday. I don't have the patience, and it's hard for me. I'm learning. Special running taught me that. It's just, hey, you need to slowly build, and eventually you'll get there. But I can see how people have these high expectations and they want everything now, that they don't give enough time until they see, oh, I can see myself now against 2 year old me when I was, 2 years ago when I started this journey, have grown so much. So I can definitely see that for sure.
Yeah. Social media has a lot to do with that. The access to information as well. Like, um, if I Google right now how to make a workout, the workout that is going to be an advanced workout for advanced people that have been training for a lot of time. If I'm starting to do strength training, or if I'm starting a business or whatever, the first result that I'm going to find is always going to be an example of what I need to accomplish. But it's never going to be the beginning. You're not going to see a workout that is going to say, go 15 minutes to the gym and do 10 dumbbells and whatever. Like, that's not a workout that you see. Like, or in businesses, you don't see the news. Yep. How to start a business or a successful business, you're never going to see the information that is going to be like the first year you're going to suffer a lot. That's not going to
Change.
that title doesn't sell. So if it doesn't sell, it's not on the internet. And in some sense, yeah, I totally agree with you on that.
You just hit the nail on the head with that statement, saying that whatever information you find on internet, whether on Google or social media, about anything in life, whether it's for training or running a business, it is a good advice, but it's not an advice for you. It's an advice for someone who is already advanced. But we don't see that. We see, oh, if this person is saying that, that means obviously this person knows more because he has walked the walk. Now I can follow that. The problem is, it's just like, even if you follow somebody like Alex Hormozy, massive entrepreneur,
Yeah,
then his advice, imagine that, and he has his book like 100 million leads or just 100 million sales or whatever the case may be. But if you don't have the confidence to go and knock the first door, or whatever information is on the book, it's not going to be it's not going to be it's not going to work for you, just because you don't have
yeah,
the you need to learn how to crawl before you're in the before you even start walking or running. And I think that point you made right there is not being talked enough on how the information out there is not what you need.
yeah, and I couldn't agree more. There's a book called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell
Mm.
that he says, he talks about the 10,000 hour, right? So he talks about how Bill Gates had the ability to to code on a computer on that specific time 10,000 hours before actually starting to think about becoming a developer. And he also talked like, and what you're saying is actually true, right? So I'm guessing that Alex, in some cases, he had the ability to become confident about himself, but gave him the tools, let's say, to become a confident person and go selling things. The same with Grant Cardone and all this type of people. But the thing is, like, you need to and that's a good question. That's a good argument that you're saying. Like, that book is not made for everybody. It's made for people that are already confident about themselves. But where do the people that need that confidence start from? So how do you build that confidence? So that's the thing. That's the book that you need to read before. That's the part. That's the Hobbit from the Lord of the Rings, and then you get into the Lord of the Rings. If that makes sense.
Hey, that's a great idea for a book, but because a lot of people want to start, they don't know how. So hey, I'll write it down just for future reference for sure. Um,
Yeah.
so all the things that you do in life, how do you juggle between friends, family, work, training? How do you find like a healthy balance?
Um, Good question. I think balance is something that, for me, balance doesn't exist in some sense. You're always giving priority to things that are, in some sense, important at the moment, right? So the idea is not to, it's how to keep doing the things, right? So, and we were talking about consistency, we were talking about habits. That's where habits and consistency comes in, right? So, if you have a business, if you have your, let's say my daughter was born 3 months ago, so at that time my priority was my daughter, but that didn't mean that I needed to stop working. That didn't mean that I needed to stop working out. Because the habits that I built, like getting up at 5 a.m. to go to the bike and, let's say, then have a healthy breakfast and then start working, and having the meetings set up as habits as well is what actually builds consistency, right? So with all the things that I do, I try to make it easier for me, and that's something that I stole from the book, the Atomic Habits one. So yeah, so the Atomic Habits, one of the things that he says that for me was key was that to start running, you need to put the shoes next to your bed, right? So you don't need to go out for the bed and everything. And that's the same thing that I do for everything. If I need to be consistent with my businesses, I put meetings on my calendar that I cannot miss. So it's basically those meetings are the ones that are going to keep me moving forward. If I constantly move the meetings and I need to put the meeting or whatever, and I'm the one that need to reschedule everything, it becomes a mess. If with the bike itself, like um, if I, let's say, if I wake up at 6 a.m. and I need to go for a ride bike, right? So I need to put the bike on an easy place for me to reach out. So it's not that it's hitting on a storage or anything. Actually, my wife is mad at me because I have the bike in the middle of the living room, and that's the thing. It's in the middle of the living room, so I can use it. So that's the idea behind it. It needs to be easy for the habit not to break,
Yeah,
and
putting
that's the word balance. I think it would be more about that, and friends and family. I think I leave that when I'm tired in the night, so I can have fun with them and everything. Yeah,
yeah, that book is about putting the right triggers in place where you can actually
yeah,
just make your life easier, one, and put yourself in positions to succeed. So if, and as you said, and this happens a lot when, and I've heard that a lot from writers, for instance, they book or they put it on their calendar, let's say 2 hours of writing, and let's say that they are in blank, they have no idea what to write that day, but they sit there for the 2 hours and say, hey, I mean,
yeah,
I'm keeping that consistency, because if I stop right now because I don't have anything, then I'm not building that habit. I'm not building that consistency. So I can see that. And it's so hard at the beginning, but once you establish those habits, those are hard uh, to drop.
yeah, yeah. I totally agree, and that's there's no balance. Like balance is going to be, I think it's a word that is going to be depending on the time, right? So there, I think balance is a term of priority. Like if you give more priority to your family, you're going to have bad. Let's say you're going to be bad at work, and vice versa. If you give more priority to exercise or to work, something something has to drop, right? So for you to uh, have balance, right? Because you're not a machine in so many ways. So the idea of being good at everything, I think is a misconception. Like you need to, and that's one of the things that social media brings, right? So you bring all these monsters that they follow the Andrew Hoverman protocols, and they're machines, and they do this type of things. And when you realize like that needs to be in some sense, it needs to be uh, I don't know if it's fake, but it's almost unaccomplished. Like, how do you spend time with your family? So if you're spending time with your families on Sundays, you still need to follow your protocol, and you cannot have one beer if you follow that protocol. And if you follow the other guy that is anti-aging, then you cannot go to the sunlight. You cannot go doing anything because the sun is everywhere. So that's the thing, right? So you need to follow your own priorities, and that's where balance actually comes from. Like what are my priorities? What are priority number one, two, and three? And basically, on that, you need to make the habits for that to accomplish. That's the way that I do it. Like I take notes from everybody, but I don't follow. But I follow my own protocol, right?
Yeah, and those are very unrealistic expectations to some degree. Whoever follows Andrew Huberman or any of these top performers is a way, like, you want to see, people are obsessed with being the most productive or being the most efficient or trying to to maximize their things. Like, but if you're focusing on what other people are doing, they might work for them. And again, you only see an image. You don't realize, you have no idea what's behind the person or behind that account. So what the way that you're doing it is like, okay, I can consider some of the things, and then I'm going to system them out and see which one work for me and which ones don't. And that's the way of, okay, now I'm just going to establish my routine, and just, it's always about testing and dropping those that don't really work for you.
Yeah, and in some sense, it's like what's available for you as well. Like, what's your time of improvement? If you're going to spend time improving yourself, you need to also take in consideration how much time do you have available. Or from all those, from all the people in social media that is always saying that you need to buy this type of things and you need to do this type of stuff and you need to do the cold plunge and you need to, those are expensive things that nobody can afford actually. Like if you think about the cost involved in those protocols, you need to be a millionaire to actually be able to afford those type of things.
Cold
And not
plunge,
only that, but you,
cold plunge like 5 grand.
yeah, exactly. To have the bath and not only have to have the cold plunge itself, but also to have the space to put a cold plunge. Like it's not that I'm going to put it on my 3 bedroom apartment. Like where I'm going to put it, like that doesn't exist. So you need to own a home, and you need to own a home. You need to so all the things, all the infrastructure that you need to have to actually accomplish those type of things. It's it makes it difficult. So based on that, the idea is to try try to learn from what they're saying without actually committing to make it as they're saying it, right? So what I'm saying about David Goggins, like, okay, if he wants to bleach out of, if he's like, if he's selling that you need to bleed out of your feet, like, okay, that's good. But the I try to learn what he's trying to say from let's say, what's the core idea. So the same with Hoverman, the same with Hormozy, like all those guys that in some sense I admire. I try to think about what's the main idea that they're selling without actually committing to do it exactly step by step, because it becomes impossible. It becomes like it's impossible to pay for. Um, okay, taking money aside, if your family habits are entirely different to theirs, then everything breaks. Let's say for Latinos, right? Latinos, in some sense, they're very familiar persons. Like, I have to go. I'm with my family from Friday to Sunday. Like that's a lot. Like my family is in my house. I need to be with my wife, my daughter, my mother-in-law, and everybody. But how do I put in all those protocols into place with all that happening? It's like 1 second, I need to go for a cold plunge in the middle of dinner. Like those type of things don't happen, right?
No, absolutely, and I agree with your thing. Just focus on the message behind the action, or just behind whatever speech that
Exactly.
they're saying, and then hey, I just use what you have around. So if you don't have the 5 grand or the space to put a cold plunge, just buy a couple bags of ice and fill your bathtub, and that's it. And you have your own cold plunge. It might not be as fancy as the other one, but hey, at least that is better than nothing. If you really want to go
Yeah.
with that in a cold plunge route and do all those kind of things. But yeah, I mean, it's something that
Yeah.
people need to realize and to know, okay, what can I take from here? What can I take from here? And just adapt it to you. You don't have to necessarily do it to the letter, right? So I get it. I get it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, Carlos, I've been having like an awesome conversation with you. And basically as a closing question is, as you mentioned, you became a dad a few months ago, and you have done a lot of things in your life, from traveling, hiking, competing, having businesses. What is a personal legacy that you want to leave either for yourself or for your children?
That's a good question. I think legacy for me, legacy is actually I think it goes more about what I want my daughter to learn from me, right? So what are the habits? Again, talking about habits, and what are the things that I want her to be like me, right? So like the idea of having a habit and having a discipline to make exercises, like eating healthy to feel better, having a business and trying to learn from everybody. That's the legacy that I want to live. I'm a very curious person, so in some sense, curiosity is something that I have been always been driven to, like nature in some sense. Like I like doing outdoor things, getting out of my house, meeting new people, and those type of things are the legacy that I'm looking for. But in terms of what I want them to remember me, let's say if that's the legacy part, it's like yeah, that's that. It would be more of a curious thing, right? So curiosity doesn't stop, right? So that involves for me that involves everything, like even the exercise part, everything. Like my target for this year is doing a full Ironman, and for next year, well, this year and next year, I want to start doing the major marathons to complete all the AWOD majors. So that's basically my next goal. And after that one, it's going to be doing the Sahara Desert Marathon, and after that one, it's going to be doing an ultra marathon, and those type of things that come along. But the idea is that I'm never, I don't want to stop doing new things, and because I'm curious about everything. So I'm curious about what. Well, the first. This is a funny story, but the first full Ironman that I actually like registered for was the one in Alaska, right? So my trainer said like you're crazy. That water is freezing, the wind, the mountains, the hill, everything. And I said like that's the idea of doing something that nobody wants to do is what is actually what is driving me to. So that's basically the legacy that I don't know if I answered the question, but yeah, if we want to talk about
Yeah.
legacy, that's what I want.
Well,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I mean, I love it. And yeah, well, if you think about doing the one in Alaska, you're basically cold plunging all 2.4 miles anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah,
Sadly, they canceled it. So
yeah.
it's something they canceled it, and the funny fact is that it was on the same date my daughter was born. So if it didn't, if it wasn't canceled, even I wasn't going to be able to make it either way.
Well,
Yeah,
things happen for a reason, man. Things happen for a reason.
yeah.
But yeah, I do have that goal as well of running those six majors: London, Berlin, New York, Boston, Chicago, Tokyo. They might add in one more. I think that they might thinking about adding Sydney to the list and become like
Nice.
seven. So yeah, and that's a long goal I have ahead. I know that the to qualify is extremely hard. You just have to be running on the 3 hours, and I'm not near there. But that is like a lifelong goal I do have. But yeah, dude, and you have inspired me to soon start training maybe for a half Ironman. The only thing that keeps me from even trying is just the swimming part. I'm not very good with water. I'm not very good with water, but
No, but there's I think the water is the easy part on the Ironmans. Like you can start swimming like anytime, right? Like get a coach, get swimming. That's the only way to start. Um, the hard part actually, I think in some sense is the bike because it's 50% or more of the race. So
mhm.
you actually spend 3 hours on the bike compared to 2 hours running and 40 minutes in the water. So um, biking is the one that gets it could get little like harder, right? So even in the full Ironman, if you put that into context, you're 6 hours and something in the bike.
It's like
So
what a
it's a
hundred.
lot of
It's like
time.
what it's 114 miles roughly. I think.
Yeah, yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
I know in kilometers, but yeah,
Oh yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, man, yeah. Again, total pleasure talking to you. I learned a lot, and I hope whoever listens to this learns a lot as well. And yeah, I'll definitely gonna think about hiring a swimming coach because I know that I can bike, maybe not for that distance. Because I think the longest I've ever biked was like 30 miles or so. I can definitely run the swimming part, open waters. That is what keeps me, you know. But hey, why not, right?
yeah,
Why not give it a try?
yeah, yeah, exactly. You need to start like maybe putting a Debbie Goggins the podcast on your on your headphones is going to help. Like, and I got actually for swimming, I got the open water ones. The I have the aftershocks
Uh-huh.
for water.
Oh, really?
So they work like you need to download the MP3 music and everything, but they're really helpful because swimming is that's a mental like that's a really mental sport. If you don't put the music, it's really hard. So what I did, I put the music in, and basically I can get my workouts with some music and some and everything. Yeah,
I'm assuming that that podcast sounds like run, motherfucker, run, never stop, and it just keep going like that,
yeah, definitely
basically.
that. Yeah.
Where can people find you? I know that you have again. I know that you have a full time job, but you also have your own side hustle, side businesses. If they want to work with you, where can they find
Yeah,
you?
of course, of course. I specialize in conversion rate optimization. Right now, I'm working with a company called ClickFunnels. Um, yeah, that's my full time job. And on a side, I have a software as a service company called The Menu. It's a QR code menu creator for Latin American countries specifically. So we're targeting Latin American countries, Miami, and Latinos, let's say, in the US. So it's something that I'm doing right now. Yeah, besides from that, like, yeah, that's basically it right now. I think both take a lot of time. So thankfully, I'm very busy. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, once again, pleasure having you here, and thank you for your time, man.
Yeah, Daniel.
Yeah. Okay.
Same here.
Okay.
Good to see you.
See ya.